Hello, welcome to our continuation of class. This is where we left off talking about pseudo selectors. First letter, selected the first letter of this paragraph. And we also talked about first line. We were able to specifically select the first line in our paragraph, or the first line of whatever this selector is. And we did it in class. So now we're going to learn a new pseudo selector called first child. So in this style rule at the bottom here, I'm going to pick, this is going to pick the paragraph that is a first child. So what do you think will be yellow? No, you're not getting any tickets. I can't give you any Twix bars over the video, but give it a shot. So it is the first line. So notice it is not the first paragraph. It is not the first child of paragraph. It looks at the paragraph and then determines if it meets the condition of being a first child. So that's kind of where the pseudo selectors are different instead of the other way around. So that don't get confused by that. Okay, so you can also combine selectors, and we did this before, like with gradients. We did gradient 1, comma, gradient 2, comma, gradient 3, etc. So you can do multiple selectors and just put a comma in between them. So what do you think will have a yellow background this time? A strong, that is a first child, and an emphasis, that is a first child. And here's what we got. All the jacks. So here's our strong. Yes, it is a first child. So is emphasis, and so is strong. This is also a first child, by the way. It is a... No, it isn't. So sorry, got ahead of myself. That's the last child. We'll talk about that in a minute. And there it is. So now we can talk about last child. You can also select whether something is a last child. So a paragraph that is also a last child. So what do you think will have a yellow background? Yes, I kind of gave it away already, but that is it. The candlestick, because it is the last child of div. Okay. And here's a combo. So what do you think would be yellow here? I have strong, that is a last child, and M, that is a last child. If you guessed nimble, quick, and over, you are correct. So all of these three meet all the criteria. So let's try it. So you're going to open up your positions.html in Komodo Edit. Might want to pause the video for a minute if you need some time for Komodo Edit to load. Okay, so the last thing we did was this style rule right here. P, hover. We were working with the hover state pseudo selector. So what we want to do instead is change this to be the M element where it is a first child. So first I'll put in the element I'm looking for, M. That's my selector, and then my pseudo selector is first child. We'll leave everything else the same, yellow, font weight, and font size. And let's go see what that looks like. I got that over here. So every first line, every emphasis element that is a first child. Nice. Does yours look like that? Here's the code again, the selector. Now what I want you to do is just select and copy and paste the entire style rule. Copy, paste, and change the background color to something else. I will pick pink. Okay. Now we're going to change the style rule right here. So we want to change this to be the bold element where it is the last child. See if you can figure that out. The selector. Bold elements where they are the last child. So it looks like this. I write B for my selector and last child as the pseudo selector. And this one should be pink. So what do we think it's going to be? Bold and last child. If we look at all the last children of each of these, there's a paragraph and then a div and then a paragraph and then a div. It's only going to select the last children that are bold. So I think it's going to be this one, bold 2 and bold 3, because this last child is not an emphasis and this bold is not a last child. So let's take a look. Yep, that's it. I don't know why I'm doing this. So just those two. And mine is wrapping because I have it there. I can make it a little less. Sorry about that. Okay. So now I just want you to double check the DOM you created for positions.html. I'm going to put this in Slack so you don't necessarily have to spend time correcting it right here. This is what it looks like. This is for positions.html. And when a browser loads an HTML page, it builds a node tree and it gives a number to everything, a position number. And what it does is it gives a number to everybody in the same nested element. So all the siblings. Starts with the first sibling it encounters, top to bottom, and gives it numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then when it hits the next set of children, like these guys, the green children, it starts the numbering over again. For each set of children, they have another number. So this is, we had first child, we had last child. There's no middle child because you could have lots of middle children. So now we're going to be able to select something based on its number. That's where we're going with this. And that's called nth child. So like if you had algebra, for example, you're used to seeing a letter be in place of a number. It's a variable. So n is kind of where what represents the ability to choose a specific child. Okay, so but instead of actually replacing the word n, we have to put a number over here in the property because the name of the pseudo selector is nth child. And so the property we have to assign it, or the value, is the number that we're going to use here. So 2, 3, 4, 5. So what is going to be yellow here? Remember, we're not looking for Strong's second child, but a strong element that is a second child. So what word do you think will be yellow? It is nimble. So here's strong. It is a second child. 1, 2. Here's a strong, but it's the first child, so it's not going to meet this criteria. All right. Now we can take a different value for nth child. It's still nth child is a pseudo selector, but instead of a number, we can say even or odd. So in this case, I want to select strong if it is an odd numbered child. So if you took the first paragraph, the word Jack, that's the first child. Nimble is the second child. In this one, emphasis is the first child. Quick is the second. 1, 2. And then this line only has 1. No, this is number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because this paragraph doesn't have any children. So the strong that is an odd numbered child, what do we think is going to be yellow? Yeah, so this Jack and this Jack, because number 1 is odd and they are strong elements. Okay. Now there's another one, another variation is nth of type. So this is a little more complicated, but basically, instead of counting every child, I'm saying only count a certain type. So I'm telling it with this particular rule, only count the emphasis elements. And then of those emphasis elements, give me the first one. So let's take a look at this one because we have more than one emphasis here. We have emphasis number 1, emphasis number 2. So the word Jack would be selected. In this case, there are 2 children, child number 1, which is a strong, and child number 2, which is emphasis. But I'm only counting the emphasis. So this is the first M that I came to. So I think that this Jack and this word over will be yellow. Let's see. Remember, that's my drum roll. That's not a drum roll. Okay. Yay. All right. So does that make sense? I can't get any feedback over the video, but I hope it does. So let's try it. We're going to go back to positions.html. Just select that entire style again. Copy and paste. We're going to change the selector. Oh, let's change the color. Let's change it to blue. Okay, so this selector needs to be an emphasis that is a third child. So all the emphasis elements that are the third child. So emphasis. Then the pseudo selector is not first child or last child, but nth child. And then we're going to say, hey, I would like this to be the third. So any emphasis that is a third child. So let's take a look at these. I see this emphasis, but that's a first child. I see this emphasis. Even though the words in between the brackets say second M, this is indeed a third child. 1, 2, 3. All right? So basically, it has to be any third child. 1, 2, 3, not emphasis. right? 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's an emphasis. 1, 2, 3. Nope, that's a bold. So let's take a look. Refresh. Haha, not a good background color. Can we do like light blue? Not a good selection. Ah, there we go. Okay. So see, it's the third child. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And it's an emphasis. Now, let's do another one. Copy and paste again. I just hit paste. Let's change this color to something light green maybe, since not including the word light didn't work last time. So this selector now we want not just an emphasis that is a third child, but an emphasis is basically, we're going to do the nth of type. So we want the third emphasis element of that type. So we know we want emphasis. We don't just want the third child. We only wanted to count the M elements, nth of type. And then we have to tell it which one we want. If you leave off that nth, it doesn't, you know, if you leave off the value, it won't know which nth you want, which one you want. Okay. I'm going to leave that sit there a minute so you can make sure you've got it right. So it looks a lot like this one, nth child, but it's nth of type. And change the color so it's different. Let's take a look. Okay, so notice this first line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is actually the fifth child, but it is the third M. In this line, this is the fourth child, but it is the third M. Does that make sense? It's only counting the M's, the emphasis elements. So that's what nth of type does. So what I want you to do right now, once yours looks like this, is I want you to save your positions.html file and then send it to me in Slack. DM me in Slack so that you can get credit for that part of the activity. So do that right now. Pause the button and do it right now. Do it. Did you do it? Okay, we're moving on. So now we're going to get all cray-cray. You can combine all kinds of these selectors that we've been talking about so far. You can take these pseudo selectors that you're going to add on and then also use those with descendant selectors. So let's take a look at this one. So here's our parent paragraph, here's the child, and then here's our pseudo selector. So we are going to select all M elements that are inside a paragraph or a child of a paragraph that are also the first child. M elements nested inside a paragraph that are the first child. I'm reading my notes down here at the bottom. So let's look at all the, it would just be first children of paragraph. So here's the 3 first children that are inside of a paragraph. And this is the only one I see that is an M. So I think that's the only thing that's going to be yellow. And it is. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Okay. Now this is combining something using a class. You could do this with an ID as well. So we have several things here that have the class of bigger. Class equals bigger. This is saying I want M elements with the class of bigger that meet the criteria of being a last child. So M elements with the class bigger that are last children. So there's 2 M elements I see with the class bigger, this one and this one. But this one here is the only one that is also a last child. So this selector should produce the word over being highlighted. And that's what happened. Okay, so we're going to try this. You need to now open up your global.css file in Aquamaniacs. So we're not in positions.html anymore. Aquamaniacs, global.css. I will give you a moment to get there. So at the very bottom of global.css, scroll, scroll, scroll all the way to the bottom. And I cheated and wrote this in already. If you want to cheat, this is the last work with me activity in lesson 3, chapter 23, and you can copy this code from there if you would like, or you can type it right now. So what we're doing with this selector is we are taking in the main content ID a direct child. Remember, that's what that less than sign means, a direct child. So no grandchildren, no sharing with the grandchildren. That is a paragraph. So I want to select the paragraph's first letter. We did this with Peter Piper Picked. We did it in the just in the PowerPoint. And we did it in class. So now we're going to pick the first letter of a paragraph that is only the paragraphs that are direct children of main content div or ID. And what we're doing is we're kind of creating this drop shadow huge capital letter. So we're changing the font size to ginormous, changing it to this hex code color. Float left means that the big letter will go to the left and all the text will go to the right. I kind of have to remind myself of that because I visualize the text floating up next to the big letter and it's floating to the right, but you actually set the float as left. Took the padding off, set a little bit of margin, line height, and text shadow. I don't know if we've covered text shadow, but we have covered drop shadow for some boxes that we created, so this is very similar. Once you get that all typed in or copied in, then we'll check actually the home page of Aquamaniacs, which is index.html. So if you need to copy this from my screen, just pause it. Otherwise, once you get it in there, let's check index.html. Okay, so this is what it looks like currently. Did I save that? Did I save global.css? Don't know. Did now. Okay. So as you can see, it has 2 humongous letters at each paragraph. So follow our navigation is a paragraph and our oceans is a paragraph. I really don't like these 2 like this. I don't mind the first one, but all I see is the word of and I can't look at anything else. Also, you should see it on dolphins as well. No. So what you'll need to do for this section is go ahead and save your global.css and DM me just your global.css file. Okay? And that is the end of the video. What you need to do next is the lobster activity that is on your own. I have attached or sent you guys in Slack the file that you need. And if you have any questions about it, please just send me a message. Bye-bye.